All right, Izzy, what are you here for today?
Man, I am here to see if I can get inside of one of those concrete mixers.
Oh, I want to know what the secret formula is to some of this concrete here. I want to see that.
I want to see how we finish the concrete.
Ooh,
No,
yeah.
guys, for me, it's getting up to that control room and seeing how they do all the batching.
I'm loving looking at how they're filling these trucks and how these trucks operate.
Okay, I'm here, I love history. So I get to talk about history today. It's unbelievable how concrete, cement, all of it comes together.
I want to see how they dig everything out of the quarry.
Oh, the aggregate.
I mean, because we're going to be digging out a lot of stone and a lot of stuff. It's going to be fun.
And I'm here to make sure we don't blow up the stone quarry.
Oh,
Izzy.
wait, we did that one time, guys. We better start the
It
show.
only happened once.
It was a simple mistake. It's the wrong button.
That's why we're at a different course.
Welcome to Between the Studs. We are Granite Ridge Builders, custom builders serving northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and also parts of southern Michigan. We have been building custom homes for almost 2 decades, and we're really passionate about what we do. So join us today as we explore the processes, the trends, and also tips that characterize today's new home. Thanks for watching.
Hey, we're here at Keystone Concrete, just south of Churubusco, about a mile or so. And I'm here with Mike Hatfield, who's one of the principal owners of Keystone. Mike's family has been in the business since the 1960s, and he told me they send out over 1,000 yards of concrete almost every day. Pretty cool.
Wow.
That's right. We've
Exciting.
been in business for a long time. It's been a family business here.
He was 4 years old.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some stats and facts.
Yeah.
What do
Now-
you know about concrete?
It's a great partnership with Keystone. Granite Ridge, over the year, will pour about 40,000 cubic yards of concrete. And to give you guys some kind of point of reference, that's a cubic yard is 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. And those blocks over my shoulder that you can see, that's about 1 yard of concrete. So 40,000 of those.
Wow.
You know, I love that concrete is such a great product. It's non-combustible, it doesn't rot or decay, so it's going to stand the test of time.
And once concrete is cast and cured, there's really no maintenance. And then look how structurally sound it is. We build our homes on it. We use it for retaining walls. It's the most structurally sound component.
Lonnie,
used
let's
in
give some
buildings.
examples of
Yeah.
all the things concrete can be used for, because it's ubiquitous in our society. In fact, there is more concrete poured than any other material. Steel, wood, you name it, concrete is the answer. So where are we using that?
I want to start by saying, the uses. We're talking about dams, we're talking about commercial buildings and buildings, we're talking about homes, we're talking about parking lots, we're talking about countertops, we're talking fences. I could go on and on and on,
Oh,
Tony.
wait, I got a bigger one than that, guys. Have you ever heard of marine concrete before? The Romans invented it. We'll talk about that in a second. But where we're pouring it now is we've got bridges, we've got sewers, we've got pipelines, anything underwater you can pour concrete because it lasts. So anyway, concrete is everywhere.
And with how big concrete is, and you said everywhere, here's a great example of it here locally. The Amazon place that they're building right now, over 1 million cubic yards of concrete for that place.
Wow.
And concrete can also be very decorative. It can be beautiful. So there's ways that you can overlay and stamp concrete to make it absolutely gorgeous.
Wow, okay, let's do a little history. Now, let me start. First of all, guess how long ago concrete was used? About 6,000 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Now, it really wasn't a concrete like we know today. It was more of a binder, a bonding agent, especially for brick, mortar type of concrete. Then, around 3,000 years ago, the Egyptians and the Greeks were using it, using experimental type things like lime. But here's the big one, the Romans. They came along about 400 BC, and they invented a secret ingredient to the concrete that revolutionized the Roman era, the empire. They had something called volcanic ash that was really close to our cement. And that's what changed the world. They could even use it in water, the marine, so they could build bridges to go over to different countries and destroy their country. Now, here's a really fun story. Anybody heard of Vitruvius? Of course, 25 BC. He had a formula and he printed it in his 10 architectural digest that he made back then, and one of those was this cementous material. And what happened, he used it and it was like 1 part lime, 3 parts this pazzolzia, which is cement. Now, after that, Romans fell about 400 AD. We lost this formula for 1,000 years. 1441 was the next year they started looking at it again.
And Tony, fast forward a couple hundred years, in 1836, the Germans really started testing the properties of concrete. They tested the tensile strength, which is ripping the concrete apart, and then also the compressive strength. And both of those are tested in PSI. So that really started, I guess, the revolution of making sure that whatever concrete's going out is meeting the requirements for whatever they're using it for.
And PSI is what again?
Pounds per square inch.
Makes sense.
And it was then Joseph Aspden who took it, and he's the one who was the creator of the Portland cement as we know it. Now, what he did is he named this after a quarry because he was in England. So a lot of people think Portland cement is from here. Nope, over the sea, and that's where it came from.
And then in 1891, the first concrete street was installed, and that was really close to our area. That was over in Bellefonte, Ohio, and that really transformed transportation.
And following that trend in Ohio, down in Cincinnati in 1903, they built the first concrete high-rise. It was 16 floors, so it was a state-of-the-art building at that time.
Now, all those things are really cool, but I have to say concrete was boring until 1950 when Lynn Schofield invented the first color concrete mix. So he used color wax or integral concrete colors on top. So that was the first time we actually made it a little bit pretty for my design use.
You know, things continue to evolve and evolve, and in the 1930s, they actually added air to concrete.
Oh, air entrainment.
Yes, air entrainment as we call it, and it helps to protect against freezing and thawing, which is really important in our area.
Those little bubbles.
Yes,
That's
yes.
interesting.
And in 1936, they finished up the Hoover Dam. Now, everybody's heard of the Hoover Dam. It's 3.25 million cubic yards of concrete.
Whoa.
So to put that in perspective, you could build a 2-lane road from Seattle, Washington down to Miami, Florida with that much concrete.
I heard you can also take a sidewalk all around the earth on the equator, and it still wouldn't be enough concrete that's in the Hoover Dam.
Oh my gosh.
So the guys then in 1963, they built a dome out of concrete at Assembly Hall. And no, not the home of the Hoosiers. It was the Fighting Illini there in Illinois. And then fast forwarding a few years after that, they started putting little pieces of fiberglass in concrete to help with the strengthening property. And they thought, you know, wow, this is new, this is really revolutionary. But back in the Roman days, they were putting horsehair in there to do the same thing. They also put blood in there for air entrainment, but we're not gonna get into that.
Wait, and think about it. Look what they did. They had the Pantheon and the Colosseum, and it's still, standing today.
Right.
So pretty amazing. 2,000 years ago, we still have that.
Now in 1980, we came up with the first cast concrete countertops. So that's when it's been used for more decorative use on the inside of the home, and it's growing in popularity still today.
Okay, guys, we got to get the show started. Let's talk a little bit about some Keystone history in a second, and we've got a whole bunch more to show you. We're going to show you what's going on in this building behind us. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this.
So Hoover Dam, have you ever done the dam tour?
No, I haven't.
Everyone needs to do the dam tour. Lonnie, we are out here at the wonderful Keystone Concrete facility. We are in Northwest Allen County, and we are at one of the companies that truly lays a foundation for our community.
That is true. They actually began in downtown Cherubusco, where the Hatfields, mom and pop Hatfield started things, and then in the mid-'80s, the boys took it over. And they moved out here actually from Whitley County to Northwest Allen County.
Yes, they did.
13, 14 acres out here, and this is where we're at today at Keystone.
Now, they were going to be putting out roughly 20 trucks 4 different times a day.
Or 5.
Sending things out here. This company is wonderful, and one of the things that they do that's also very unique is they will add color to that concrete.
They're known for their colors, and I think we figured out about 1,000 yards a day go out of this plant. Very important trade partner to Granite Ridge. We love Keystone Concrete.
Elizabeth, get out of the truck. We gotta talk about
I
these
can't
things.
help myself, Luke.
I know,
This is exciting.
It's like a big toy.
I know. Now let's talk a little more about concrete. When one of these trucks arrives out to one of our job sites, what are some of the common terms we hear? Curing, workability, can you elaborate?
Yeah, sure. So you said the word cure or curing. So that is essentially the amount of time, depending on the temperature, the moisture, the humidity, if it's sunny, if it's cloudy, that it takes for that concrete to then reach the desired level of setting up for its function. So for example, we take a slab, it's going to take maybe, several hours for that to get hard enough for us to be able to start walking on it, and several days before we can start framing on it. So that's that curing time.
Now PSI, we talk about pounds per square inch. What is pounds per square inch when it comes to concrete?
Sure, so it kind of can mean 2 different things. It can be the compressive strength, but also the tensile strength. But basically what that means is in 1 tiny square inch, how much pressure or how many pounds you need to apply to it to get the concrete to fail. So that's one of the first of many things we check out on the job sites to make sure that we're getting good quality concrete.
And that varies. So your PSI is different from your driveway to the slab foundation on your home, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. So we do lots of different PSIs. Our footers are 2,500 PSI. Our slabs are going to range between 4,000 and 4,500. Our driveways are going to be around 5,000 PSI. So depending on where it's at and how exposed it is to certain elements, we're going to then strengthen that concrete.
Now, out at these sites, sometimes you'll see a cone,
Yes.
and that's called the slump test.
Yeah, the slump test. So essentially what it is you fill up concrete in a very specific way on the top side of that cone. You slowly lift the cone. That cone is exactly 12 inches tall. Depending on how much that concrete then slumps down or shrinks down, if it goes from 12 down to 8, then we know we have a 4 slump. But if it goes down from a 12 down to a 2, we know we have a 10 slump, and that's traditionally very bad out on a job site.
Not good.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about workability. Obviously, we know if it has too much water, it's really easy to work.
Yes.
Less water, it's more difficult.
Yeah, so the concrete crews, they need a good balance between workability and then also making sure that we're not hurting that PSI. So if it comes out real soupy, it's going to work great. They're just going to sit there and just slowly let everything kind of self-level it. But traditionally that means that the PSI is going to test out at a lower grade. So we need to make sure that it's good enough though, because if it comes out too stiff, then there's no way they can move that concrete around to get that nice level surface that we need to be able to build the house off of.
Another term I hear is honeycombing.
Yeah, honeycombing. So if you're ever out on a job site, you'll see people hitting the form boards with like a hammer. They're trying to create some vibration to basically allow the cream to then push that side, because they can't work that side. That's one area of the concrete they cannot work because the form's against there. If they don't hit it enough, you'll get some honeycombing. All that means is you're seeing some of the coarse aggregate. Traditionally, not a problem. It's just a bit of an eyesore.
And finally, Luke, the big word everybody asks about is hydration.
Hydration, yeah, that's a good one. So what it is basically the chemical reaction that takes place when the cement then comes into contact with the water molecules. And once that chemical reaction starts to take place, that's called hydration. And that's what's going to create that bond, that glue that just pulls all those components together.
Great, I'm getting back in the truck.
All right, have fun.
Looking pretty good, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, we borrowed the truck. I think we turned it back better the way it was.
I think so.
All right, Mike, so we're playing with some tools here, but there are a lot of tools that are needed out on the job site, not only that come on this truck, but that the concrete guys bring out just to be able to get the concrete to finish correctly.
Right. So let's talk about a couple of those, Luke. So we have the screed board. So that's basically, it looks like a metal 2x4 that's got a straight edge on it.
Right.
And they've used that to rake concrete into the places that they want them, and it acts as like a leveler.
Yes, exactly. So it's a giant straight edge
Yeah.
just to bring concrete close to the level it needs to be. Then they have these hand tools that you'll see them running around using. Those are called trowels. Those trowels can help bring some concrete into areas where it's a little bit low, but then it also starts working that surface, allowing some of that cream to rise and some of the larger aggregate to get pushed to the bottom.
Yeah. And then we have what we call a bull float. So that is like a flat edge finishing tool on a really long pole. And this is where the artistry comes into these concrete guys,
right?
Where they're running this bull float out 30 feet and then bringing it back and then having that smooth finish on it.
Yeah, so you always notice the most experienced concrete guy that's on the job sites operating the bull float, and it does take that special touch. Then they also use what's called a power trowel. So it's like a giant fan that's spinning across the surface of that, and it's very timing specific. They got to get on it late enough that they can stand on it, but early enough that they can still work that surface to make sure that it gives it that nice, almost mirror look like finish.
Yeah, and then there's walk behind power trowels, and there's also the ones I've seen guys out there actually riding on them where it's got a seat that you can ride on.
Right. Now also don't forget the brooms. Now it doesn't quite look like this, but in areas that you're on the exterior concrete, you need to have some bite. So that way when it's raining, you're not slipping on it. So then they have those long brooms that they're just pulling across the surface to give it that nice little, just enough of a grip or I guess a surface to allow people to grip while they're walking across.
And then another one of those finish type things, you see all these cut cracks going through the concrete. What are those and what do they do?
Yeah, so you can accomplish those by two different things. You can either use a special trowel and you can trowel a control joint in, or you can use what is called a concrete saw. And it literally will just run across, they chalk lines out, and it'll just put about 1/4 of an inch cut into it, and that's what we call the control joint, hoping that we're encouraging the concrete to crack along those so it's not an eyesore.
Okay.
And then we control where that crack's going, hence control joint.
Okay, and then finally we have what's called an edger. It's basically like one of those hand trowels, but you use it along the edges of the exterior concrete. It gives it that smooth finish and then that rounded edge as well.
Right, it kind of gives it a nice picture framing, if you will, kind of a good transition between the rough concrete to the landscaping or the
border.
grass.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, well, I think we got to clean the back now, so why don't we go back there and get this truck before we
right.
turn it back in?
Hey, you gotta clean that up better.
We're not ready for inspection yet.
Woohoo! What are you doing? Looks like they got a built-in car wash.
Gotta clean it
Easy.
off.
I can't hear. Come on, help. Turn that thing off. It's too. There, good, great. Whew. Hey, we're out here at Keystone. We're looking at trucks.
Whoa,
We want to
sorry,
talk about
Easy.
trucks. And this is a $300,000 machine that does incredible things. They actually make these trucks in Fort Wayne in the Villa.
Yeah.
And they're very unique to our market because they have a front load that they make here compared to the rear load, which is used around the world, really.
Yeah, if you're using the rear load, you're gonna have an extra man on the team. You're gonna have a chute man that controls all these chutes so the concrete goes where they want it to go.
Yeah, these trucks carry about 10 to 12 yards. And typically, they got to dump what they gather here at the yard within an hour to hour and a half.
Yeah.
They're really on a tight schedule.
Yeah.
And the drum here behind us has this big agitator spiral in it that mixes the components.
Yeah, it's a great, and I'm telling you, you gotta jump in there and take a look at these controls because there are so many controls in there. I wanna push all the buttons and I haven't pushed them all yet.
Don't do it. One of them actually ejects you. Yeah, you gotta be really, really careful. But these are incredible trucks, and we're really, really blessed to have them in our market.
Now, Luke, I think we've said before on the show that concrete is kind of like baking. The ingredients that go into the perfect concrete mixture is just like a chef when he's baking. He wants to make the absolute perfect confection. And that's what we have here. We're going to talk about some of the ingredients that go into our awesome concrete that we have in our houses.
Yeah, so let's first start with the aggregate. There's fine aggregate and coarse aggregate. So you can see up here we have sand. That's going to be your fine aggregate, right? And then we have our large aggregate, which can come in lots of different ways. But this is going to be traditionally what we use, which is an 8 limestone. You can also use gravel. You can even use glass for your aggregate. They use that sometimes for decorative concrete. So there's lots of different ways the aggregate can come in. This is about 33% of the mixture. The sand's about 33% of the mixture, and that makes up about the 66%. Then you have your water. So your water is what you add to the mixture. That's going to be kind of the agent that then starts kind of creating the chemical reaction. This is about 10%. Now, if you mix the water, the sand, and the gravel alone, what do you get?
You're just a big soup, I think.
Right, yeah. The building department will only let us build sandcastles at that point.
Not so
the
much.
most important ingredient is this right here, which is the cement. Kind of like Tony said with the Pasonic, that was a volcanic ash ingredient. The cement here today is a little different than that, but it makes our concrete so much better and it's gonna last for years. And again, like I said, we have a few other secrets. We don't wanna indulge that right now, but we are the experts along with Keystone. We spend a lot of time and we take a lot of pride in our concrete.
Come out to any one of our homes. We'd love to show you how well we do with this concrete.
All right, guys, so we're here again at the Keystone Concrete plant. Now, we take for granted when the concrete truck shows up to our job site that there's just concrete ready to be poured, but there's a lot of steps between now and then. And kind of what I want to do today is just walk through the entire plant operation here.
There's a lot of ingredients that are in. We got to haul the limestone in here from Fort Wayne, the sand from our gravel pit. This is specifically for concrete.
Yeah, so this is number 8 limestone, which the 8 refers to the size, and it gets hauled up that conveyor belt, right, into a mixing batch, basically, and they're weighing it as they're doing that.
It's all processed. It's got to go from the pile, up the conveyor, and into the plant.
Right.
And now, Luke, you talked earlier about the components that have to go into concrete and how they have to mix right. So we talked about the coarse aggregate. Then we go with sand. So that, like you said, that comes from your pit up at Tri-Lakes.
Correct.
So all of this, Fort Wayne, Tri-Lakes, it's all sourced locally.
That's exactly right.
Right, okay, so we've got the sand, we got the gravel, or the aggregate, I should say. We send it up the conveyor belt, and then at that point, we got to mix a few other ingredients into it. But let's go over there and let's talk about that mixing part of this process.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Mike, can I drive that front loader?
Sure.
We talked about 2 ingredients so far. Let's talk about a third one, the water. The water for this plant all comes from 2 6-inch wells. And then you have some massive bladder tanks in there. And what's also key about this is in the winter time when we're pouring, we actually preheat that water. So you have some major water heaters in there that allows you to heat that water to put into the batch.
That's right. Our wells can put out 400 gallons per minute each, so that's 800 gallons per minute.
Yeah, that's incredible. So then we got to talk about the last ingredient.
Yeah, so up here behind us, you can see these giant silos up there. That actually contains the cement for this mixture. So that gets trucked in here, and then that gets batched into your mixture as well.
Correct. You've got Lafarge cement. We also pick up another brand from downtown Fort Wayne, right at Industrial Park. They rail it in.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about the control room in a little bit, but at the same time, they put in some chemicals up on their end, but all this goes into that big square looking thing over my left shoulder. That's all that's weighed, and then it gets dumped into the truck. But that's our very next segment. So why don't we walk over a little bit further and we can see where it gets mixed up and then dumped into that truck.
Yeah, so we've talked about the materials that go into making concrete, and this is kind of where it all comes together and then gets dumped in the truck. Behind us, you can see those silos where the cement is. So water gets pumped up and the cement gets dropped down and mixes in with that sand, that fine aggregate, and the stone, the coarse aggregate, and then it gets weighed up here. Everything is computerized and electronic, so that way there's very little area for human error, and then it gets dumped into the truck.
That's right, Mike. Everything's weighed out exactly how it's supposed to be, and it's recorded in the office. It goes into the mixer there and dumps into the truck.
So that mixer, it's spinning and mixing everything together. It can also tell us our slump, which the slump is once we dump it, how well it holds its form. So a low slump, it's not gonna move too much, but a low slump, it'll just look like soup.
That's right, Luke. They're in control of that up in the office, so every truck can be the same. They can get the same slump.
Okay.
It's in the batch man's hand.
Right, so they're getting ready to dump it into that truck behind us now. I think a lot of people have this misconception when they're seeing this truck going down the road and that drum is just spinning, that they're mixing the concrete at that point, but it's already mixed, so why are they spinning that drum?
Well, they keep it agitated, like Tony said before, so that it keeps it moving.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will start setting.
Yeah. Now, how quickly do we have, once it's dumped on that truck, before we got to dump it on a job site?
Depending on the temperatures, on average an hour.
Yeah. So it's so important. And like you said, everything's computerized. And so what I want to see next, if we're allowed to, can we go up into that control room?
We could. It's really state of the art.
Okay.
You're gonna love to see it.
Let's go check that
That'd be
out.
awesome.
Yeah.
Don't press any buttons though, right?
No. All right, Mike, they led us into what they call the command center here. And talk about sensory overload. There's so many buttons and graphs and charts and videos to see. I can't hardly take it all in.
Yeah, it feels like we're at NASA, you know, and we literally have a lookout here so that way they can see everything that's going on with the trucks.
Right, so an order comes in here, they write it down on a piece of paper, they upload it into the computer, and essentially, as we talked about before, a lot of it's computerized, so the computer takes over and starts kind of, I guess, pulling everything in it needs to make that batch. But these guys here sitting here can check at any time how many, pounds of cement's going in, what kind of aggregates going in, what kind of chemicals are going in, and they have a great view here of the concrete that has now been mixed dumping into the truck, so they can see everything that's going on.
And that's super important for us because we have to have different mixtures of concrete for different types of pours, whether we're pouring a footer or we're pouring a driveway or if we're pouring the slab, So these guys really control a lot of what's going on our job sites.
Right, so they got about 28 acres here, they got about 47 employees, and a lot of those are truck drivers. It's really these guys up here that are sitting here that just know everything that's going on.
Yeah, and we've talked about it earlier, they have 28 trucks that they're running throughout the day. So, they really have to be on top of where everybody's at for that timing because it is a time-sensitive project.
Right, it's a lot to manage here, but these guys got it down to a science.
Yeah. Luke, we've been up here for about 10 minutes, so I think we know how to run this stuff now. So
I've been watching them.
That big red one looks pretty enticing.
Look at this big red one.
Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that truck's on fire.
At Granite Ridge Builders, we are always studying, we are always learning new things, we're always seeing what the greatest trends are. We have been truly paying attention to lumber prices over the last few years. As we know, they skyrocketed, they came back down, they went back up again. One way that is new that people are looking at is building homes with concrete. Now there's some new things that are going on where it's almost like a 3D printer.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the chute here and going to some different ideas.
And it's almost like a big tube that goes down and the computer just runs these tubes back and forth showing exactly how they would build the home, do the walls, do the infrastructure, and they're doing it all with concrete.
It's a great way to try to solve the housing crisis, which is the same thing that Edison did back in the day. That's why he turned to concrete. And it's not something that totally went away either. In the 1950s, and it took root more in America in the 1960s and 70s, was brutalism. And this was taken from French words that made art and brute together to talk about this brutalism form. And so with this, we saw again the concrete walls. And what kind of buildings did they do?
When it came to that, they were doing a lot of city-county buildings. They were doing a lot of major manufacturing plants. They were doing universities, and they were doing homes in the 50s, 60s, and 70s completely done out of concrete.
And of course, the critique of it, that it looked just like a bunch of concrete just poured on the ground, was a little bit brutal, if you would, there as well. Because brutalism can really be a beautiful form, and we got some great pictures to show you here, some examples of beautiful architecture done with brutalism.
Now take a look at this home and how they did the front porch, and they did the design work on this concrete home.
We moved on also to architecture with education too, universities and schools.
Here's an interesting home done out on the West Coast when it came to the concrete structure.
And today we're seeing neo-brutalism, so it's taking those same architectural styles but putting that modern flair on it.
Now Izzy, I don't know if you know this, but there's a concrete home right over this way.
All right.
Yeah, it's right this way. It's right over this fence.
Oh, I can scale that.
Okay.
Electric fence. That is the oldest prank in the book, Tony. Come on.
All right, guys, we got to close this show, but first we got to thank Mike and the rest of the Keystone Concrete Company. It's been a fantastic day walking around here, getting to know the plant better and getting to know them better. So thank you, Mike.
Hey, before we close, why don't you reiterate, what do you think was your favorite thing that you saw today? Mine was how ubiquitous concrete is. I mean, it's on roads. It's everywhere in society. So I thought that was just amazing how much we use.
You know, as Tony mentioned earlier, it's actually very waterproof, and it's also considered fireproof.
I love the fact that concrete has been used for so many different types of tools as well. Even the earliest forms of radar were concrete.
I love the decorative but also purposeful ways that concrete can be used, like the Frank Lloyd Wright Hollyhock House in Hollywood. In the 1920s, it was the first textile block structure, and it is absolutely amazing.
And Edison, which is one of the guys that Frank Lloyd Wright kind of learned from a little bit, was doing the forms that even do concrete furniture.
Not sure about that one.
No, I don't either.
And I wanted to talk just a little bit about the facility that we have here. You know, things that are locally sourced. They're using people from the Fort Wayne area to create this product for us.
Now, we've shown the concrete plant here, and they do a fantastic job making sure that concrete is perfect for us. But there's so many things once it leaves this plant that can affect it. The temperature, the humidity, how fast the wind's blowing, how far we're dropping it once we get it to the job site. There are so many things. Concrete itself is such a complicated part of this piece of building a house. It takes a great team for that.
Yeah. All right, we're backing up about 10 concrete trucks. We got to close really quick. Would you close for us?
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do so well, please pick up the phone and give us a call, visit our website, or even better yet, we'd love to see you in our office and talk all about concrete.
Hey, you think they'll let me drive one of the cars?
You can't drive a moped. Call them a chute, man. If it was in the rear, which a lot of the trucks are, then
a B. Because they tried to make everything just so it would blend in with what was already here. And the architect, sorry, I have a bee flying in my eye right now.